The last moving box had just thudded onto the dusty heart pine floor of my new lake cabin. The sound echoed with a satisfying finality in the quiet, pine-scented air, a sound that said, "You are home." I straightened up, my back aching from the long drive and the unloading, and wiped a sheen of sweat from my brow. I walked through the open doorway onto the porch and allowed myself a moment of pure, unadulterated triumph. After years of saving, of navigating a labyrinth of legal paperwork so complex it would have given King Minos a headache, I was finally here. I had officially moved in less than an hour ago, and the view from the front porch was sprawling, uninterrupted. Panoramic vista of the sparkling, sapphire blue azure lake was already worth every penny and every sacrifice. My moment of profound peace was shattered by the indignant crunch of tires on my new gravel driveway. A golf cart, gleaming white and customized with what looked like leather seats, pulled to a stop. At the helm was a woman with a severe blonde bob that looked like it had been sculpted from marble, while her face a mask of profound disapproval. She was flanked by two large men in matching polo shirts bearing the ostentatious Golden Swan logo of the Azure Lake Estates HOA. They got out of the cart and stood behind her, their arms crossed, their posture a clear and deliberate attempt at physical intimidation. "Good afternoon," the woman said, her voice devoid of any welcome.
Yes.
As crisp and cold as the snap of a dead twig. "I am Sandra Mills, the president of the association. We're here to discuss the unapproved landscaping, the unauthorized driveway material, and the illegal placement of your cabin on community property." I blinked, certain I had misheard her. The words were so fundamentally at odds with reality that my brain struggled to process them. "I'm sorry?" I asked, my voice betraying my confusion. "Community property? This is my land. I am Jacob Anderson. I just closed on it this morning." She offered a thin, pitying smile, the kind a queen might bestow upon a court jester who has just told a particularly pathetic joke. "A common misunderstanding, I assure you. You've purchased the cabin. Yes. Lovely little rustic structure, though it will need significant work to meet our aesthetic covenants. But the land it sits on, the entire 5-acre lakefront parcel, from the tree line down to the water, is a community-owned green space. The previous owner, dear old Mrs. Gable, had a special arrangement with the association. That arrangement, of course, did not transfer with the sale. You'll need to come to the community office this afternoon to sign a new land lease agreement with the HOA. And of course, submit your cabin for an immediate architectural review." I stared at her, the triumphant feeling of a moment ago curdling into a cold, hard knot of disbelief in the pit of my stomach. She wasn't just welcoming me to the neighborhood. She was trying to declare herself my landlord. She was attempting to evict me from the very ground I had just bought, all within the first hour of my arrival. I am a land surveyor by trade. I have spent my entire adult life studying the intricate, beautiful, and absolute language of deeds, easements, plat maps, and property lines. I had spent the better part of 6 months on the title research for this specific property, a quirky, pie-shaped parcel that had a messy and fascinating history that sang to my professional soul. I knew every inch of its legal DNA, every clause. In its century-old deeds, the cabin had been built in the 1940s by an eccentric inventor who had owned the entire western shore of the lake. In the 1980s, his heirs, needing money, sold off the vast majority of the land to the developers of what would become the Azure Lake Estates. However, they had carved out this one 5-acre wedge of prime lakefront, the piece with the original cabin, and kept it for themselves. The deed they had drawn up was a fortress of legal language, a masterpiece of property law designed to create a sovereign island of private property in the middle of the planned community. For years, the cabin was owned by an elderly woman, Mrs. Gable, who had indeed had an arrangement with the HOA. I'd found her old journals. The arrangement was that she'd let them use a small corner of her land for their community beach in exchange for them handling her lawn care and promising to leave her in peace, a promise they had apparently forgotten the moment she passed away. I had bought the property from her estate. The sale, as is standard legal practice, had extinguished all previous informal arrangements and permissive easements. The deed I now held, the the one recorded with the county clerk at 9:15 a.m. this very morning, gave me sole, unencumbered, fee simple title to the cabin and all 5 acres of the land it sat on, free and clear of all liens and claims. Ma'am, I said, my voice dangerously calm, the initial shock now being replaced by a cold, professional anger. I think you are operating under a severe and legally perilous misapprehension. I have the legally recorded deed for this entire 5-acre parcel, including all riparian rights to the water's edge. There is no lease agreement because I own the land, and your community beach, in fact, is currently trespassing on my property. Sandra's pitying smile vanished, replaced by a mask of cold fury. She had clearly expected me to be an uninformed city dweller, easily intimidated by her binder of bylaws and her 2 burly henchmen. She had not expected to be contradicted with the calm, unwavering certainty of a professional. You are mistaken, she snapped. Our lawyers have assured us that the green space is a common area. We have been maintaining it for 20 years. That establishes a precedent of adverse possession. It establishes a history of permissive use with the previous owner, which has no legal bearing whatsoever on a new title holder, I countered. The legal terminology flowing easily, my words like sharp, clean stones. To claim adverse possession, your use would have had to be hostile and adverse, not consensual. Mrs. Gable, letting you use it was a courtesy, not a forfeiture of her rights. Courtesy that, as of 9:15 a.m. today, has been officially and permanently concluded. The 2 large men with her took a synchronized step forward, a clearly rehearsed act of intimidation. Look, buddy, the one on the left said, his voice a low growl. The lady says this is HOA land, you're new here. You don't want to make trouble. You're going to have to sign the papers. The sheer, unmitigated audacity of it was breathtaking. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was an attempted land grab, a shakedown, on the very day I moved in. They were using thinly veiled threats of physical force to try and bully me into signing away the rights to the land I had just paid my life savings for. I will not be signing anything, I said, my voice dropping, my eyes locking on Sandra. And I am telling you and your employees to get off my property immediately. This is not your property, Sandra shrieked, her voice rising, the carefully maintained facade of the calm executive cracking. And if you refuse to cooperate, we will have you removed for trespassing. She pulled out her phone, her fingers jabbing at the screen. I am calling 911. I am reporting an unauthorized individual who has taken up illegal residence on HOA, common property, and is behaving in a hostile and threatening manner. We'll see what the sheriff has to say about your supposed deed. I simply stood my ground on the porch of my new home. The smell of fresh coffee from the pot I had just brewed mixing with the scent of pine and impending legal battle. I watched as she fed a dramatic, fabricated story to the 911 dispatcher. She was so confident, so utterly convinced of her own authority. She had no idea that the one thing a professional land surveyor always brings with him on closing day is a certified, notarized, and legally irrefutable copy of the brand new deed. She was calling the police to have me evicted, and in doing so, she was about to make them the official witnesses to her own spectacular downfall. The county sheriff's deputy arrived 20 minutes later, his cruiser kicking up a cloud of dust on my new gravel driveway. He was a young officer, his face a careful mask of professional neutrality. But his eyes, as he surveyed the scene, betrayed his weariness. It was a Saturday. He was being called to a petty property dispute in the county's most notoriously litigious and wealthy community. It was not how he had planned to spend his afternoon. Sandra was ready for him. The moment he stepped out of his car, launching into a well-rehearsed, dramatic performance, a symphony of victimhood and civic duty. Thank you for coming so quickly, officer, she began, her voice filled with a mixture of concern and relief. I am Sandra Mills, the president of the Azure Lake Estates HOA. This man, she pointed a trembling finger at me, has illegally moved into a cabin on our community-owned lakefront green space. He is a trespasser. We have the official HOA master plan right here, which clearly shows this entire area as a common property vital to our residents' quality of life. She gestured to one of her goons, who produced a glossy, colorful, large-format map from the back of the golf cart. She spread the map on the hood of the deputy's car. It was a beautiful piece of marketing material. An artist's rendering showing happy, cartoon families frolicking on a vast, green lawn that stretched down to a sparkling lake. My small cabin was colored in a muted green, blended into the landscape. To make it look like a charming little ranger station or a public restroom, he refuses to leave. She continued, her voice cracking with emotion. When we approached him peacefully, he became hostile and threatening. We are a community of families. We feel unsafe. We are requesting that you remove him from our property immediately. The deputy listened to her entire speech, his eyes flicking from the glossy map to me, standing quietly and patiently on my porch. He then walked over to me, his boots crunching on the gravel. "Sir," he began, "you've heard the complaint from Ms. Mills. Can you tell me what's going on?" "I can," I said calmly. "My name is Jacob Anderson. I am the legal owner of this 5-acre property. I closed on the sale this morning at 9 a.m. at the county courthouse. I have the deed." Sandra let out a loud, derisive laugh from across the driveway. "He owns the cabin, officer. A structure. Does not own the land. It's a classic leased land situation, and his lease is not with us. He's trying to confuse you with technicalities." "That's an interesting theory," I said, turning back to the officer. I walked back into my cabin and returned with a thick blue folder, the kind lawyers use for closing documents. "Officer, what the HOA has shown you is a marketing map, an artist's fantasy." "This," I said, pulling out a sheaf of thick, legally watermarked papers, "is a certified copy of the grant deed that was officially recorded with the county clerk's office. At precisely 9:15 a.m. today, it grants me Jacob Anderson, sole, an unencumbered fee-simple title to the property designated as Parcel 7B, including all structures, land, and associated riparian rights." I then pulled out a second document, a large, folded plat map. "This is a certified copy of the official county plat map for Parcel 7B. If you would compare the boundaries on this legal document with the cartoon she has on the hood of your car, you will see the discrepancy." I laid the official map, with its stark black lines, surveyors, seals, and precise legal descriptions next to their colorful one. The difference was immediate and undeniable. Their map showed a vague, borderless green space. The official plat map showed a clearly delineated 5-acre, pie-shaped parcel with my cabin sitting squarely in the middle of it. The property lines were marked with the unforgiving precision of legal fact. The deputy's eyes narrowed. He was no expert surveyor, but he knew the difference between a legal document from his own county courthouse and a sales brochure. He traced the lines on my map with his finger, then looked at the land around him, noting the ancient, gnarled oak trees that were noted on the map as official survey markers. "And just to be perfectly clear," I added, my voice steady, "the previous owner's arrangement with the HOA regarding the use of the beach area was a permissive easement, an informal verbal agreement. Under state law, a permissive easement is automatically extinguished upon the sale of the property to a new owner. Therefore, their continued presence on that beach." I pointed to the small sandy area where several HOA residents were lounging on towels. "Now constitutes criminal trespass on my land." The deputy's professional demeanor hardened. Was beginning to understand the full scope of the situation. He was not here to deal with a simple trespasser. He was here as a witness to an attempted land grab through intimidation and the deliberate filing of a false police report. He turned to Sandra, his voice now devoid of any of its earlier patience, replaced by a tone as cold and hard as iron. "Ma'am," he said, "this gentleman has provided a legally recorded deed and a certified county plat map that clearly state he is the owner of this entire property. Your map is not a legal document. On what grounds did you base your claim? That this is HOA land when you called 911? Sandra's face went pale, a chalky white beneath her expensive tan. Our lawyers, they told us. The old records. The previous owner let us use it for 20 years. The previous owner is irrelevant, the deputy said, his voice sharp as a razor. "What matters is the name on this deed, recorded today. You called 911 and reported this man as a trespasser on his own property. You have used your employees." He gestured to the two large men who were now looking. "Deeply uncomfortable and trying to blend in with the golf cart? To attempt to intimidate him into signing what appears to be a fraudulent lease? You have knowingly filed a false police report with the intent to deprive a legal owner of his property. That is a very, very serious offense, Ms. Mills." The word offense had finally broken through her wall of entitlement. Her power, so absolute within the confines of her HOA meetings, was utterly meaningless when confronted with the actual law. "You and your employees will leave this property immediately," the deputy commanded. "And I would strongly advise you to have your residents vacate the beach area, as Mr. Anderson is well within his rights to have them all cited for trespassing. As for you, ma'am, you can expect a call from the district attorney's office. Filing a false report to instigate a wrongful eviction is something they take very, very seriously." Sandra stared at him, her mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. Her entire world, her entire sense of authority, had been dismantled in less than 5 minutes by a man with a blue folder. Defeated, she and her two goons retreated to their golf cart and sped away, leaving a cloud of dust and humiliation in their wake. The deputy gave me a long, appraising look. "A land surveyor, huh?" he said, a small, knowing smile touching his lips. "Figures you probably knew this was coming." "It comes in handy," I replied. He shook his head. "You have no idea. Enjoy your new home, Mr. Anderson, and don't hesitate to call us if they give you any more trouble. I have a feeling they won't." He tipped his hat, got back in his cruiser, and drove away. I was left standing on the porch of my cabin, the deed in my hand. The air was quiet again, the only sound the gentle lapping of the lake on what was now, officially and indisputably, my shore. I had been a homeowner for less than 3 hours, and I had already fought and won the defining battle for my land. The welcome had been hostile, but the victory was incredibly beautifully sweet.